Hey there, Refuge Church. I'm so excited to be with you. We have got good stuff to get into today on the gospel and emotional well-being. So I'm going to pray and kick us off. God, I thank you that you desire good things for us, that you are a good parent, that you don't want us to keep our nose on the grindstone and keep going until we drop, but that you have promised beautiful things for us. Joy where there used to be ashes, and beauty where there used to be shame. And so I thank you for that. I thank you that that's the work that you're about to do and the work that you like to occupy yourself with. So I ask that that would be the case today for everyone who is listening, that your spirit would do its work, that you would attend to me and to everyone who is listening today. I thank you again for who you are and ask all these things might be done in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen. All right. So we've been talking about these different biblical characters and these different archetypes or narratives that we all might experience as we grapple with the gospel and the good news, and how we can minister to ourselves and be ministered to in that space, different emotional experiences that might come up when we have each of these lies or each of these tendencies and structures. So this week we are on Enneagram type 6. If that's surprising to you, you can go back. I explain it in lots of detail in our first video in the series, so feel free to go on back. But today we're kicking off talking about the character whose name originally was Shimon, or as you might be more familiar with it, Simon. Shimon gets given a new name by Jesus, Petros, and sometimes in the text he's referred to by both names, Shimon, Petros. So he is a fisherman who lives in the north of Israel in the time of Jesus. So in the first century. And Shimon, his name means one who hears, which is good. Shema means to hear and to attend to be obedient to in Hebrew. And we can see that in his life and in his world. Of course, it's also connected to the character of Shimon in Genesis. If you're familiar with the character of Shimon and Levi, they're the ones who feel so passionately about injustice that they go out and murder a whole bunch of people. We gotta have murder. We've gotta keep it going in this series. And we can also see that in Shimon Petros's life. But now I'm getting ahead of myself. So he is a fisherman in the Galil in the north, which is has an interesting mix of rural and intellectual elite, all jammed together, and a lot of zealous political revolutionaries mixed in. It's a wild region at the time. But Shimon Petros is a fisherman, which means that as he moved through the Jewish education system, he has taken his exam or his test to see if he is worthy to be taken on as a disciple by a rabbi, and he did not meet that bar. And so because of that, he has started taking on the trade of his father. And we know he's an adult, unlike the other disciples, because of some other details in the text. So he already might not feel like the protagonist in his own life. It's a big thing for sixes. They can sometimes see themselves as people who are on the sides, and other people have these big personalities and big callings and big things that they're to do, and they can kind of see them more as support. And so that's where we find Shimon Petros fishing, liking to be useful and dependable. Jesus walks up to him and asks, can I borrow your boat in order to give this teaching, which is a genius leadership move of Jesus. But Shimon shemas, he hears and attends to the words of Jesus, and he says, sure, even though it's a sacrifice for him to give up some of his fishing time. And he listens to the message of Jesus, and Jesus asks him to follow him. And he says, yes, this is a big deal. He's been brought onto the crew. He has a team. He has a tribe now. He is part of these disciples of Jesus, these 12 disciples, and he kind of becomes the leader of them, the person who's in charge as the oldest of responding to Jesus. And when Jesus asks a question, the disciples, it's their job to kind of talk amongst themselves and try to figure out, and then one person will give the answer back, and that's Shimon Petros. So some of the times when we see in the text, boy, he's talking a lot, it's because he's fulfilling this role that he's supposed to be doing, which again, sixes, they feel secure when they have a role, they have their people, they know what they're supposed to be doing. And so we see him do that and have security in that and grow through the leadership of Jesus in that. He has great loyalty to this group. When Jesus is facing betrayal and is getting arrested, Shimon Petros is the one who cuts off the ear of one of the people who's trying to arrest Jesus. Jesus has to say, "Whoa, that's not what we do. That's not who we are here." And he takes the ear and heals the person arresting him, which is also a whole sermon in itself, right? But that's also pretty typical of the sixth. They like to be secure. They like to be in their spot. They find strength in being part of a group. And if you challenge someone in that group, it's possible that a six will go, hey, and come after you. So if, they hear a bump in the night, they might be the one up and saying, hey, who's there? That might be your six. However, self-preservation and anxiety can also be a big part of the experience of a six. And we see that tragically happen for Shimon Petros when Jesus has been arrested, when everything seems like it's falling apart. Shimon knows that he is in danger. And so when he is asked by various people as he's waiting to hear the outcome of Jesus's trial, hey, are you associated with that guy in there? He says no. And he betrays Jesus. His loyalty is not as great as his sense of fear and self-preservation, and he clings to that instead. When his safety is the thing that is up in the air, he goes for that rather than doing the good and right thing of following his love and his mission and his calling, right? However, Jesus, of course, after he is murdered, he comes back. Spoiler alert if you're not familiar with the gospel. And he offers Shimon Petros a chance for redemption. He asks him 3 times, do you love me? Over breakfast. And Shimon says, of course, you know that I do, which is pretty defensive, right? And then Jesus's response to Peter's defensiveness is to say, then feed my sheep. So then, therefore, if you say that you love me, take up your responsibility, lead my people. Shimon Petros's response is, well, what about John? What's he going to be doing? And Jesus literally responds, what is that to you? You follow me. So he's encountering Shimon Petros, who he's given this new name, which means rock. He's called him to be solid. He's asked him to be this rock upon which he's going to build the church, right? Is what it famously says. So he's asking him to step into this new identity and say, normally you might feel like you're a really back and forth person who has a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety, but here's this new calling that I'm giving you. You're going to be a leader. And you are going to be the stability upon which everybody else is able to grow and flourish because of this great strength that you have. And we see him go back to being a fisherman when Jesus has died. So he's not moving forward in this new identity, right? We have free will. We always have the choice to walk in the identity that God has given us or not. And he has chosen not to. He goes back to what's comfortable for him and what's safe for him. And Jesus instead calls him into, hey, what are you doing? If you love me, like you say you do, then feed my sheep and stop worrying about what John and other people are up to. Jesus ascends into heaven again. Surprise. And Petros, that's the word that means rock, this stable name, is a leader in the early church, a really big deal. He ministers to Jerusalem. We still see these 6 things come up for him for better and worse. He gets accused rightfully of racism by the other disciples. So if you're in the church and that's happened to you before, you're in good company, and maybe you should listen and repent instead of being defensive about it. And because he doesn't want to eat with Gentiles, he doesn't want to eat with outsiders. So pro-segregation Peter has to learn that there is not an us and there is not a them. Another really big theme for 6s is if I have my tribe and my security and my people and I'm loyal to them and I'm the one helping out them, outsiders are not welcome in that space, because that's partially how I define myself. I'm a fan of these things. I love these things. I'm with this political party. I'm with this and this and this. You are not that. And finding their identity in that can be a challenge for 6s. And so we see that show up for Shimon Petros as he's challenged to break down those boundaries and break down those barriers, as Jesus is the one who did that in his ministry and challenged them so greatly on still ministering to the Romans, the ones who were oppressing them, ministering to women who were outside of the land in the north, right? He healed and blessed the Syrophoenician woman. We see it all through Jesus' ministry. This is a very important part of the gospel and who God is, and it takes Shimon Petros an extra time to catch up. However, we do see some courage, some strength, some of that rockness that Jesus spoke over him. He steps into it. Jesus gave him a warning, a prophecy that if he was faithful to the task that God had given him to do as a leader, there's a possibility that he was going to also be crucified. And we see that does happen to Shimon Petros. In tradition, it says that he started to flee a place, and when he heard that he was in danger and decided to return, and in his returning to that place and choosing to do the right thing anyway, he ended up being crucified as Jesus had told him. As he had prophesied in John 21, if you want to go check. So we see this big arc for him. Lots of fear, lots of doubt, lots of us and them, lots of moments of trying to do the right thing and not always knowing what that is to do. And yet Jesus speaks over him. You are a rock. You are a leader. You need to do this, provide for my people, care for my people, lead my people. And we see Shimon overcome his fear and step into that. So if any of those themes might have resonated with you, you could be a 6. You could also just be a regular human. But you might be a 6 if you were raised to believe that the world was a dangerous place by overprotective caregivers, or you were raised in a dangerous and unpredictable situation without safety, or you were raised to fully trust authority without encouragement toward critical thinking. Okay, so we can imagine any of those being the case for Shimon. The world was a dangerous place. They were being persecuted by an oppressive empire that was occupying their land. So that was certainly true. We don't know whether his parents were overprotective or not, but you can certainly imagine it being possible. And in this very strict religious system that emerged for very good reasons out of exile in Babylon, you're very much encouraged. These are the ways that you're supposed to walk, and you should do it. And that's the end of the story, right? And so many of us also were raised with that same idea. Don't ask questions. Don't try to be special. Just do, the thing that you're supposed to be doing. Keep your head down and you'll get through it. That's the gospel for so many religious communities. So because of this, the 6 learned, 1, to doubt reality and to attempt to assess their current security. So if you're raised to believe that the world is a dangerous place, and especially if you live, in a privileged place, you will be constantly trying to assess whether you're really okay. Is this reality, like people are telling me that this will be okay, but am I really doing a good job? Do people really like me? This turning inward is a pattern that we'll see, a pattern of turning in and then projecting out. So number 2, because of this, the 6 learn to reject their own instincts and inner guidance. Hopefully, what we hope for us as humans is that we are able to know that our instincts are there for good reason, and that we have the Holy Spirit within us, and that we can check in with ourselves at any time and say, is that true? It doesn't seem like that's probably true. That's probably a fear that I can set aside, right? However, if you're taught that your heart is evil continually and you are not allowed to trust yourself, that can cause you to lose grasp on the compass of what's real. So we can get conspiratorial, we can get some confirmation bias, right? You have these eyes out to see, okay, I'm in danger, I'm not okay, I can't trust myself, I can't trust these different things. And so therefore I'm going to look for data that affirms my position that I'm in danger, right? The 6 also learn to create a big exaggerated persona when insecure. Okay, so this section is taken from the work of Liz Carver and Josh Green. Sometimes gender bias sneaks in here, not with their work in particularly, but with all of the Enneagram, in that 2s are often imagined to be women, and that might look a different way when you put the cultural assignments of gender binary on top of that, and you have a male 2, that might look differently. So with a female 6 versus a male 6, that big exaggerated persona might look different. So women having breakdowns is more socially acceptable than making yourself big and bombastic and saying, what? You've never done blah, blah, blah. You've never seen that. Lying can be part of this. Blaming others can be part of this. I would have been just fine. Everything would have gone my way if only you hadn't have gotten in the way, right? That can pop up for either side. Of course, none of those are inherent. They're just culturally assigned traits of what's allowed and acceptable, just acknowledging that that might look different depending on your context. So, because of this, the 6 learned to form a tribe to affiliate within and maintain safety for themselves and others. Okay, so if you're doubting reality, you're always second-guessing your own security, you're rejecting your instincts and inner guidance, and sometimes you're motivated to make this big persona of blaming other people, or having breakdowns, you will feel most safe and secure when you have people to affiliate with. And so 6s can really build their identity by their affiliation, by what kind of people they're with. And we see that problem in Simon's life, right? Okay, but these are all learned behaviors that are coping mechanisms so that the 6 could, 1, become the expert on detecting signs to help them know what's happening next, thus coping with unpredictability. So if you don't know what's going to happen, you feel like the world is dangerous, you need to be on the extra hyper alert awareness to know what's going to happen next. And so constantly doubting and constantly looking for data, whether that data is good data or not, is a coping mechanism to be able to try to handle unpredictability. Number 2, their coping mechanism so the 6 can prepare for challenging and scary situations by processing subtle signs in the world. Ooh, that person looked off to the side when they said, I really appreciate you being here. And what that means is that they don't actually really appreciate me being here. And I need to worry about that and perseverate on that and check in with them and be like, hey, you totally don't like me, right? It can look that way sometimes for some 6s, or trying to glue yourself to that tribe more if you're afraid that they're going to reject you. Again, coping mechanisms, all of those things are so that the 6 can align themselves with new authority figures. So often on the lookout for better tribes to join, right? It can feel a lot like loyalty when you're operating within this tribe that makes you feel safe and secure. But like we saw with Shimon and Petros, when he is sitting around the fire waiting to hear what happened with Jesus, he was pretty quick to abandon ship and try to find a new source of safety. So the messages that the 6 might grapple with and all these things is, I must be safe and secure. I can overcome unpredictability, and I can't trust myself, right? Those are the big themes. There are wonderful things about 6s. God created all of us to be loyal and faithful. 6s excel at that most of the time, right? God created us to be thoughtful and prepared. God doesn't want us just to be necessarily singing Elmo's World for some reason, but tripping along through life, and whatever happens, happens. Again, we've talked about it's good to be rational and strategic. It's good to be thoughtful and prepared. And 6s are good at looking ahead and seeing potentialities that might come true and helping the team be prepared for those eventualities. 3, God created us to be watchful and discerning. Same kind of thing. 6s are wonderful to have on a team because they have good discernment about how things might go, because they have lots of practice thinking about how things might go. You just need other voices at the table that are also trusted to balance that out. Okay, and God created us to be honest and dependable. 6s love to be dependable, right? They find their place in their tribe through dependability quite often. But some of the emotional experiences that can come up for 6s and all of us include anxiety and fear. We're going to talk about anxiety, worry, and avoidance, which again, any of us can experience. So the American Psychological Association characterizes anxiety as an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes like, and not limited to, increased blood pressure. This stems from an intolerance of uncertainty, right? I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't have trust in that place. I don't trust myself. I don't trust the world. And so because of this, I'm going to feel tense. I'm going to have worry, and my body is going to start responding to that. Worry is defined as a chain of negative thoughts about bad things that might happen in the future. So all of us can experience intrusive thoughts about, fill in the blank. I hope I don't get in a car accident on the way to work today. Worry is choosing to settle into those thoughts and think about the chain of events that might happen from that, or how we might get there, and what would happen if that happened, right? It's a spiral that some of us are pretty familiar with. So Brene Brown says these truths about worry, pretty transformational. Those of us with a tendency to worry believe it is helpful for coping. It is not. Sitting there and thinking about all the things that could go wrong is not helpful. It's not likely to happen. And even if you do get in a car crash, you won't be like, oh man, I'm so glad I spent 5 years thinking about what I would do in a car crash. You're going to be focused on surviving in the moment. You can't really prepare for that kind of thing. And so it is not helpful for coping. Those with a tendency to worry believe that it is uncontrollable. It is not, right? We have all these messages, especially in culture. Anxiety, especially for the millennial generation, is kind of just the atmosphere that we're breathe, right? That we joke about all the time. That is just who I am. Anxiety, we imagine as a trait of something that we just do continually. It's part of who we are. However, the research says that it is controllable. It doesn't have to be who you are. God can give you a new name and a new identity, like he gave Shimon, someone who's listening and attending to all the data. Instead, he gives him a name of stability and strength. And those with us with the tendency to worry believe that instead we should probably suppress our worry thoughts. So it's not, rather than saying, oh no, I'm worrying again, stop it, oh dear, and shoving it under the table, it is helpful to recognize, rather than worrying about worry, that worrying is not a helpful coping mechanism. We can learn how to control it, and that we need to dig into and address the emotion driving the thinking. So instead of saying, oh right, I'm not supposed to give in to thinking about what'll happen if I get into a car crash, we're supposed to say, why am I worried that I'm going to have this happen? What is going on in me that I believe that the world is unsafe and that there are only bad things lined up for me in my future? Do I have a problem believing that there are good things for me in my future? Right? That's what looking at addressing the emotion driving the thinking means. For some of us, though, that's extraordinarily difficult because we like to practice avoidance. Avoidance is not showing up and spending a lot of energy zigzagging around and away from the thing that already feels like it's consuming us. This practice can hurt us, others, and lead to increased anxiety. So Dr. Harriet Lerner says, you want to feel comfortable, so you avoid doing or saying the thing that will evoke fear and other difficult emotions. Avoidance will make you less vulnerable in the short run, but it will never make you less afraid. This is the classic, I'm worried that I have a bad email in my email inbox, and so I'm not going to check my email inbox. And so the longer that I don't do it and try to distract my brain with other things, the more that anxiety piles up and boils over. So again, Liz Carver and Josh Green say this: your sharp eye for things that could go wrong is a gift to the communities that you are a part of. However, if you start to externalize and project every single worry that comes your way, you keep others at a distance from you. This is what I mentioned earlier. You see some evidence that someone isn't safe or that they don't like you, and then you project it onto that person and make it part of your belief system and start testing out to see whether that's really true. And that's not a comfortable experience for the people on the other side. And so you end up losing intimacy and losing connection and losing friendships and work relationships because you're always presenting or you're tempted to present this all this negative data all the time. This expectation that others don't like you can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Okay. They go on to say, when you take a concern and project it on anyone who's listening to you, you're asking them to manage your insecurities and problems, which is not theirs to manage. Learning the difference between sharing valid concerns and projecting insecurities will serve you and all the people in your circles. So when you do that, when you say, I just don't think I'm good enough for this, or I really don't think my boss likes me, or whatever, to your friends or coworkers, what you're doing in that moment is asking them to take care of you, which is not necessarily their job to help you manage all of your emotions. It's your job and your responsibility for your own well-being to stop and say, okay, is this true? And do I really have good data for this? And where, more importantly than those questions, where is this fear coming from? Again, asking yourself, why do I believe that people won't like me, or that my boss thinks that I'm doing a bad job, or that today's just going to go terribly? What is it in me that's causing that? Doing that work and not projecting it out on others, again, helps your relationships to thrive and makes your tribe actually more cohesive, right? If you want to be able to happily and comfortably affiliate with a tribe, which is part of human nature, this helps bring your relationships together when you're not projecting your insecurities around you to everybody else and asking them to make you feel better, right? It's not their job. There's a difference between that and sharing valid concerns. And one of those big life curves is for you, sixes, is figuring out what's a valid concern and what is just my insecurity. So our keys for anxiety, worry, avoidance, projection, all these things we're talking about, is being thoughtful and examining which of these are insight and which of these are projection. Okay, that brings us to our lies and our truths. So the first lie that we have is, I don't belong. My authorities and support structures will keep me safe, right? We look for a tribe and we cling to that tribe because we're afraid of being alone. The truth is that you already belong in God's family, at God's table, and that because of that new identity and truth that God has given you, you can know that you are already safe and secure within yourself, and so you don't have to go find a better authority figure to keep you safe or to affiliate with. You are already okay exactly as you are. Lie number 2, it's not okay to trust myself, right? This thing from our childhood messaging that the world is dangerous and scary and your heart isn't any good and you shouldn't listen to yourself. We have lots of texts that tell us that that is not helpful or true when we are empowered by the Spirit, right? So Psalm 32:8 says, I will instruct you and show you the way to go. With my eye on you, I will give you counsel. Psalm 16 says that God gives us counsel, and at night we counsel ourselves. So when you can't hear the voice of God, you can trust that God is still within you. And that is okay. It's kosher. It's allowed. No matter what kind of sketchy theology we heard as kids or growing up or from the church about don't trust yourself, trust me, your pastor, right? It's often where it's coming from. Okay, the third one is, I am not safe. This is a long one. I'm not safe. This isn't going to end well. I always have to have a plan, and I am controlled by fear. Not ideal for any one of us to believe that we are controlled by fear, right? That's not a good place to be, not a good place to live. 2 Timothy 4:18, the Lord will rescue me from every evil work and bring me safely into his heavenly kingdom. The gospel for sixes, I am safe. There is an authority figure who will always be good enough for me, who will always take care of me, who will always protect me, and I will be brought through this whole journey to the very end, thanks to God. Not thanks to the great new pastor you found, not thanks to the good new denomination or whoever you found that makes you feel better, but because God is taking care of you. 1 Peter 5:7, we're going through these. Hopefully one of them really clings for you and sticks with you. We're invited, cast your cares on him because he cares about you. So instead of, I'm not safe, this isn't going to go well, I have to have a plan, we're invited to take all the things that are freaking us out. And 1 Peter 5 here says that we are invited, the Greek actually says to roll them onto him. So they might be too heavy for us to pick up, but we're invited to intentionally say, I'm giving this to you instead of trying to shoulder it on my own. Deuteronomy 7:9, we're just going to cruise through these, says, know that the Lord your God is God. That's a profound statement all on its own. The faithful God who keeps his gracious covenant loyally for 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his commandments. So God's character is not fickle. God's character is not one that disappears for some time. Maybe that was your parental experience. God is one who is faithful to show up and be God through every single day of your life, through all of these times and generations. We got Psalm 127, verse 1, which says, unless the Lord builds a house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays alert in vain. Okay, so you staying up at night worrying about things doesn't make it better. That's the watchman staying alert in vain. Your worry does not affect the world in a positive way. It probably affects your life in a very negative way, right? In your health, your well-being, and what happens. The Lord is the one who we can trust in to watch over us and to keep us safe. And he's going to do a way better job than we do. Psalm 4:8. That's right, we're still going. You guys need lots of stones to build this new space, a new house of security and strength and stability in. Psalm 4:8, I will both lie down and I will sleep. Good for people with anxiety. In peace. There's the third piece, not unrestful sleep with nightmares and concerns and waking up in the night, but I will both lie down and sleep in peace, for you alone, Lord, make me live in safety. I cannot make myself live in safety. You cannot make yourself live in safety. God can make you live in safety. And finally, a famous one, Psalm 91. People used to write out Psalm 91 in Hebrew and keep it in a little amulet around their neck, which is a little bit ironic because then you're trusting in the amulet to keep you safe rather than God, but I digress. The one who lives under the protection of the Most High dwells in the shadow of the Almighty. So if we are continually taking refuge in God, we are turning to God, we are choosing, instead of thinking that worry will help us, that God will help us, applying with the help of the Spirit, why am I feeling this way? What's coming up for me? What am I believing or doubting that's making me struggle with this? When we are doing that, living in the shadow of God, he is our protector, and he is above all things that could possibly happen in this world. That is the reality that all of us are invited into. That is the gospel for sixes, and I hope that it blesses you today. We'd love to have you online with us. You can fill out a form at refugepullman.com where you can also give, and they'll send an email to us and we can send the Zoom link to you if you don't live in the area. We'd love to see you if you live in the area. I'm going to pray. God, I thank you that when we are chaotic, when we are spiraling down into worry, when you can feel so removed from our situation, that we are still invited to find you and to seek you and to experience you as our rock. You make us look like you, and so we are able to also be a rock. We can be a source of strength that is unwavering and unconcerned, that is not shaken. I thank you that you see that for us, that you invite us into that, and that is possible because of your grace, because of your Holy Spirit. I pray that you would do that transformative work. I thank you that this is the work that you are about. I ask that we might walk into full sonship, full daughtership, full childship of you. When we are divorced from your love, we don't claim the safety and security for ourselves. And because we are your kids, we are invited to say, no, I'm a child of God. Of course I am provided for. Of course I will be okay. So I pray that that would be deeply true for us, that we would find you to be the ground of our being, in whom we always have safety and security. I thank you that it's not something we have to create for ourselves, since we fail all the time. I pray all these things in your name, Jesus. Amen. See you guys next week.